do that if Fish and Wildlife owns it. So this spring, now Fish and Wildlife on that the land they presently own, they're going to clear cut and put that all back into just weeds, I guess, or whatever. And so that's it. Let me mention back to the shaded yellow area. Our management of that land involves a change over the past 10 years from growing crops to raise a little bit of money to now we strictly either mow it or cut and bale it. Gary Chillicote, he cuts and bales what's cut and baleable because it's not all. You can't all get that and use it. And the reason for that is, to remove deer cover and habitat. It gives a pilot who's making an approach or who's taking off the opportunity to look off into the distance and pick up any deer that might be out there, because we are, of course, stuck in a wildlife refuge. In fact, that wildlife refuge was created the same year the airport was christened, from what I understand. The ditches, we have had success in the last couple of years in keeping them clear of tall weeds, because the deer, the ditches, which are right next to the runway pretty much 50 feet away, the deer will bed down in there if the weeds are tall. So the Ventrac, which we purchased and it arrived in February, has done a lot of work in clearing that. The city works guys cut and mow the mowed land around the buildings next to the entrance road. I mow next to the runway, and that's I insist that I do that because I mow with a radio that I can talk to airplanes with, or at least hear them. And I've got the situational awareness, given my background, to recognize what's going on and avoid a situation where an airplane goes bounding off into the rough for whatever reason and runs into somebody who's on a mower. And so it's my policy, whenever I hear somebody or see somebody that's landing or taking off, I clear beyond the ditches and I watch them as they land or take off, and then resume. So that's what's going on there. So I think, unless do you have any questions on any of this? When I talk about grant money, let me also say that it is only the initial purchase of the land, not the maintenance of the land, and it's a 90-10 problem. And the same thing goes with the construction projects, except for, I would say, when it comes to the runway, the ramp, and the taxiway, big projects, maintenance projects, like we're going to start next week, that's a 90-10, 90% feds, 10% local match, which, as you know, has always been provided by local economic development trust, the private trust. So it's never really ever come out of city funds to provide that 10%. Infrastructure, the runway, built 92, 93, as you can see. Every 3 years, you'll see that B there, 1B, condition rating. Every 3 years, the state funds a engineering, although it's, I watched them do it twice, and it's a matter of somebody in a car going down the runway making notes, taking pictures. But they rate the condition of the runway, and they just completed one in 2021, and our rating was 69. So I would give it a C+ because it's out of 100. And so runway being 30 years old coming up, that's what its state is. We have runway edge lighting that was in 2013. It's in real good condition. It's pilot controlled. I mean, arriving in the radio, you click the transmitter a certain number of times to turn them on, and then raise the brightness or dim them as they desire. I didn't put in there the rotating beacon. The rotating beacon, about 22 years old, I think. They generally have a life of about 25 to 30 years. A few years ago, I inquired into replacing it. It was like $25,000. Again, we can get grant money to do that, but that's something I think that might end up requiring attention, possibly the rotating beacon. The T hangar building, that's the southernmost building. There's 6 units. It's all one building, but each bay is shaped in a T. That's why I call them T hangars. Ours were built with state grant money, and they're in good shape. I try to keep them every few years. I call the door companies, have them check the cable tensions, all that sort of thing. And I don't want to see a situation where cable breaks and wham, door comes down. They're try to keep them rented. It's pretty difficult given the state of general aviation and all the rest. Our main hangar is in real good shape, I would say. I've got the size listed there and some features of it. We did replace the roof and one wall and the windows in it this spring. That was due to derecho. Or was that the fall? It was the spring. I heard it. It's all blurred. But the furnaces have been replaced in the past 2 years, so it's in good shape, as has the water heater. Removal equipment building, that's the northernmost building. Some pretty good rules. It's not that they have an SRE police out there. We don't, but it again was federally funded to the tune of about $200,000 back in 2010, and it's in good shape. Try to keep it up. The fuel tanks, I don't know when the fuel tanks were put in. There was no grant money involved. That must have been a tipping thing or something. I don't know. When 10 years ago when we took off, they were in sorry shape. Holsworth, who rents the main hangar, they fronted $14,000 to rehabilitate them. We couldn't get money to do that. And we only used the one tank, the avgas tank, which we, the city, you guys, retail, and I maintain and do the quality control in that. And we are branded. The reason for branding that, the Phillips 66, is to get an additional $20 million worth of insurance should fuel contamination incident occur. Because whenever an airplane crashes, the very first thing they do is they try and figure out where they got the gas, and they go there and they impound that tank. Aviation gas, aviation fuel, 100 low lead they call it, is very durable. It's hard to contaminate, but you can do it. It's one reason my predecessor left. It's because he didn't. So I do the quality change, the sumping and the all the other inspections that need to be done with that. We have a card reader for that, and it's so old that I can't get parts for it anymore. So I try and maintain that. To replace it, to just read the avgas would probably cost $20,000 or more. So I think when it craps out, I've seen airports where it's an honor system kind of thing, and it seems to work. I have to say, you probably know, this fuel that I price it here, and we don't make any money on it. I have to price it so low to get people to land here to get the gas, so it turns over, because I can only keep a batch for 6 months before I need to refresh it. And refreshing means is to put in as much as is already in there. So if there's 1,000 gallons in there, I have to put at least 1,000 more gallons in there. That's considered refresh. The Jet A tank, we don't retail that. It's I'll use the expression. It's rented to Holsworth. They use it. And they maintain it to their own specification. I kind of make sure they sump it. But they take fuel from it and put it in the tanker and then put it in another thing. And each time it's going through another filter. The reason we don't retail it is there's so little demand for that. And it's been that way probably beginning a year or two after it was installed. I've known about the airport for probably 1998. In fact, before that, I was on the airport commission when I lived in town. They weren't there, so that would have been 97. And I think it was shortly after that. And after that, I know it was never retailed. And the reason being is little demand. Jet A is susceptible to microbial contamination. So it needs to be sumped every day. And if it isn't pumped through the filter or it has to be recirculated, it's a more difficult thing. And Clarendon, I heard about this from two different sources. I think it's Clarendon. They were retailing Jet A, wasn't properly maintained. A medical helicopter refueled there shortly after takeoff, ran into a problem. No crash or anything, but the inspection of the filters, I don't think it damaged the engine, but they couldn't go anywhere until the helicopter was fixed. So my idea is that it shouldn't. There's just not enough demand for it. The tank is so big. Say our demand was 1,000 gallons, and those will hold 4,800 gallons of fuel. They're 6,000 gallon tanks, but 80%. The more air on the surface that you have exposed, in other words, the lower the level of fuel, the greater the chance of contamination. So that's a little long-winded on fuel tanks, but that's the situation. And lastly, I'll mention the fence that surrounds the airport is in fair shape. I've repaired some places. It's not going to stop the deer. There have been proposals over the years to put a deer fence. That's a fool's errand, in my opinion. It would probably cost $800,000 or $2 million. And the first flood that comes along is going to knock it down. And then you're going to have tens of thousands of dollars to repair it. So it goes back to my efforts to eliminate in as wide an area as possible all cover for deer to give the arriving department pilots the greatest opportunity. And I will mention we do have a shooting permit for both deer and geese. Although swans have been taking care of the geese, so you've probably noticed I've heard about that. So I really like swans. So anybody have any questions about that? The next page, equipment. We've got 2011 International plow truck with about 5,000 miles on it. Can only be used on the airport. It was funded by the FAA. Do regular maintenance on it and that sort of thing. It's in good shape. In 2020, we bought a 72-inch Skag zero-turn mower that I have the greatest time with, mowing up and down next to the runway with my headset and radio on, making sure that that area is mowed. The Ventrac, we got last February. Only were able to use it for a couple of snows, but it did what my objective for it was. The FAA, well, the DOT, by the FAA, the state DOT, doesn't want to see piles of snow. Maybe in the past, if you looked over at the runway, perhaps you've seen at the end of the runway a mountain of snow off to the side or even off to the end. They don't like that. And the only way to prevent it is to use a snow blower. So we use the snow blower attachment to clear the ends of the runway and then use the plow truck to push the snow off to the side, and it prevents those mountains of snow. And then we use it elsewhere. And then again, the tough cut mower is what we attack the ditch with primarily to get rid of those weeds. And then we've got a courtesy vehicle bought a few years ago for $4,000 using funds we've accumulated And just like the Ventrac and the zero turn mower. Actually, the zero turn mower was purchased with some COVID money that was allocated to airports for operational expenses, not capital expenses, but operational expenses. So, anybody have any questions? Kind of a fire hose, I guess, maybe. See you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Chief,
I want to do number 9 before we can.
okay. Go to number 9, but as long as I've got the attorney's attention. Are we going into closed session tonight? Okay, feel free to throw out 19, 20, and 21. And if we go to the inspection report, in the red was the inspection report of this inspection, which wasn't that good. And then she informed Steve and I before the meeting that their plan now is to tear the house down and tear the garage down. And will we in court with any of this stuff?
Yeah, so this morning I had a trial scheduling conference with the court. Obviously I wasn't made aware that the plans were to tear the house down, but it doesn't really matter for my purposes. If it's not tore down or if the issues are not resolved, we do have a trial scheduled for December 14th. So that was the first one today, which the court could allocate the amount of time that we thought we needed. So after, whether it gets tore down before then, or whether we go to court on December 14th, we should have a resolution within a couple days after trial, I would hope.
Well, that helps set up a timetable.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have. Obviously, if we do proceed toward a trial, we'll have to get the inspector to testify. So I'll probably be in contact with Steve to get his information and.
How many properties are scheduled for that trial?
So that one is just the smaller property. The other two properties that we have that were kind of pending, we haven't got orders back on those allowing for publication. Those are the two that we were having difficulty serving the defendants, Carlson and the
Burns.
Yes, Burns. So we're still waiting on the court to issue an order allowing us to serve those individuals by publication since we sent out the sheriffs. And they've been unsuccessfully served via personal service. And then obviously the other two properties, the Enos properties, we're waiting to see what happens with those. Those are purchased. And then the Oak property, we're kind of waiting on that one as well to see if the estate's open or if we're going to have to do an abandoned building and acquire title on that. I know that the family on that one has just recently contacted the city. So that one's kind of on hold.
They reached out and the mother, and she said she wasn't exactly ready to talk about it, but wanted to let me know that they were aware of everything.
Next time she calls, tell her she's got a blue tarp in Beal's front yard.
Well, with Smalley's property, I think we should go to court. She's had long enough, and I don't think they're gonna tear it down.
Well, the court date's already set, so regardless of whether they tear it down or not, until I'm directed by the city council to stop the proceedings, it's full steam ahead with trial.
I guess, council, it's up to you guys if you want to set a date that has to be tore down or proceed with the court procedure. That would be in order tonight.
I mean,
And then we can inform her that it has to be done.
some dates, so we meet on the first and third. So I would say by the December 7th meeting, if it's not tore down, then, because that would be, really be the last opportunity for the council to say, stop, don't proceed on the 14th. So I would say the December 7th date would be the deadline that I would be comfortable with, because that would give me a week's time to inform the court that the issue's been resolved.
So if we go to court on that property, exactly what are we attempting to do?
Well, we'd ask the court for an order saying that the nuisance, the outlined nuisances would either be abated within 15 days or allow the city to do it. And then we'd have to, the city would, I think I'd have to look at the exact complaint, what we let. Some things that are easy, like the garage, or the question, do we have to tear down the house? And will we get a judge to allow us to tear everything down? And then it says cost of the judgment for such.
Really, the question is the actual dwellings on the,
Well, I think whatever I led in the petition, which basically just was taken from the report saying that these things needed to be addressed. So all of those things we would ask the judge for, saying, these are the things we initially cited. You can look at, the progress that's been made or lack of progress that's been made. We're asking for a judge, allow us to go in and clean up the debris, take down the garage, take down the house, all that. And
so
then
then the cost of that, does that get assessed to the landowner?
we would have to assess, it would be probably assessed through taxes, special assessment. Just like any other time the city has to go in and abate a nuisance, whether it's mowing the grass or.
Oh, that's gonna be the whole thing. You get a house turned down, but then you still have the issue of, are they gonna take care of the lot?
Right. Well, and if they don't, I mean, that is a separate violation and, that's, I guess, the burdens of city abatement of nuisances.
Mhm.
This,
Yes,
Can I ask a question
sure.
or make a statement? When, the house on the opposite side of the street, which was Shane Wilkins' house, when he was told to tear that one down, he ended up burning it and that smell permeated into our house for days.
You can't burn that one down, too close to our house.
Can you make sure that it's worded in there that that's
He
not an
didn't have a
option?
legal right to burn
He
that.
did,
He burned it.
He burned it.
I know what he did.
but I'm afraid that's what'll happen with her. If there ain't, push comes to shove, they'll just light it. And then our place is gonna be trash. It's close, it would ruin all the
Well,
work
we
we've
will
done
call
to
the
it.
fire department to come down, and put it down, because it's too close to your house. It needs to be.
I have concerns with that.
I assume council just give a motion so that he can send her notice. It has to be tore down by December 7th, or we're gonna proceed. to court.
Tore down and cleaned up.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll make a motion that she has till December 7th to have it tore down and cleaned up, or we're going to court.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
you want me to write that letter from the city or you want Gage to write it?
Okay, you write it. But I think she's coming back in to talk to you on how you get the permit, so
Yeah, I understand.
get ready to be the bearer of bad news once.
So when you see those flashlights on December 6th,
Call the
Go have a whole
police
team in there or
so we
what?
can come down and check on how they're tearing it down.
I think I'm putting up an orange fence and I'm not shitting you. Do I need the license for that?
for like debris from blowing
I have
over.
the demolition.
Put up a tarp.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Check with the city administrator. I think there's a fence permit you have to have.
Okay.
Anything else on Second Avenue property, folks?
I will say, one last thing is, this is all assuming that the judge sees
Right.
it on
Yeah.
tape. I can't. I'll do my job, that's my ability, it's ultimately up to the judge whether or not they deem it a nuisance. But it's well documented and we have pictures which help. Right. We'll have our inspector testify.
Do we have the right to charge those property owners for the cost of our inspector to come testify?
We can ask for it.
Well, the reason I bring that up is the council doesn't see it, but have you seen the latest bill on this inspection? Like $435?
When he does multiples, there's an economy of scale, but if he's got to do a one-off, his travel time is
Didn't
still,
dawn.
Mileage even, you know?
yeah.
Dave,
Is that something we can special
did
assess?
she call in the inspector or did you guys do that?
We did.
We did it.
Can we do special assessment on that or part of the court costs?
We would need an order from the judge saying
They have
that
to
it
say that
was,
we can.
that the costs of
Okay.
individual assessments. I mean, in my view, it's part of the cost of abating the nuisance.
Well, I hadn't noticed the high price until I saw the bill on one alone. Anything else on Second Avenue? Well, let's go to the chief of police.
And this is really exciting stuff. I'll get the simple stuff out of the way. The disorderly house ordinance that you guys looked at, and Ashley basically just drafted us a rough draft of it. I emailed that to HJ. Just for him to review, and then I'll hope to have that at the first meeting in November for you guys to do a first reading. So. Let's see, I had Axon send us a trial, or a new taser and new body cameras for a trial basis. We had them for about a month. The officers and I took a look at those, and it's something that we would like to try pursuing next year at budget time. I can bring you some more documentation on that as far as cost. But I think all the officers were really impressed with that new Taser 7. The efficiency of it and the effectiveness of it is probably 10 times greater than what we're currently using. Let's see. Axon. I passed out some information before the meeting. There's 4 different pamphlets, but it's all in regards to one thing. It's Lexipol. Lexipol is a company that does policy procedure manuals for law enforcement across the country. I believe they got over 100 clients here in Iowa and 5,500 nationally. This is something that I learned about talking with a couple of area police chiefs, Williamsburg Police Chief and Benton County Sheriff and the Benton Police Chief. They've all signed on to Lexipol. I took a look at it. I think it would be something worth our time. So the pamphlets that you have in front of you, one of them, it just says reduce risk and cost. This one here, this is 2 pages. It's basically just a brochure. Tells you what it is, tells you what they do, and how they've helped other agencies. Keeping us safe, reducing liability, improving the understanding of the policies. Basically, they can start a policy manual for us from scratch. We endorse it, we approve it. If something doesn't jive with our department or with our city, or if it's just something that we don't need, we can take it out of there. They can send, once they do the policies, they send out a review of it that has questions. The officers have to go in, they have to read the policy, obviously, and then answer questions, so it shows that they understand it. And all of these policies that they create are vetted by attorneys, and they're all Iowa-based, so it's all based on Iowa law, Iowa practice. So when you get to this other pamphlet, which is basically just a PowerPoint, it says community, city council, community town hall at the top. That first page didn't print correctly. And you see, it talks about Wisconsin in here. That's supposed to say Iowa. They sent me the wrong one, but it's all Iowa-based stuff. So, and as you can see, the very last page is an Iowa map. Kind of gives you an idea of the number of agencies and where they're at. We use this thing. And then the other two are the actual cost proposals, and it is expensive. I'm going to admit that it is, but I think it's worth the money because Gage will tell you, one lawsuit will blow these costs out of water. So the difference in the two proposals, and obviously this isn't something that we're voting on tonight. I want you guys to look at this and absorb it maybe for budget time. The first one, I'm looking at, it says page 205 on the second page. There's a 5-page one and a 6-page proposal. The 5-page one is just the basic policies. Okay. Gonna start that up. They were gonna prorate it, not quite $3,000. Then there's a recurring cost every year, unfortunately, of $3,700 for that. That's just the policies. You look at the second one, this has a few more things. It's a little more money, but not very much. We're talking the policy manual, the daily training bulletins, and then they also have an inventory management program, which I think would be very, very useful to help us keep track of our equipment inventory, what we have, what we don't have, what we need to replace when we bought it, et cetera. And then there's also they call it Police One Academy, which is basically online continuing ed for the officers. We're already doing a little bit of online continuing ed, so we will probably do away with that if we would go with this one here. So again, I'm just putting this information in front of you guys so you can look at it. You can ask questions on it later on, that's fine, but it's more to kind of get the gears moving towards budget time and hopefully try to get this integrated. So other than that, I know Tyler Brandt came to the last council meeting with some concerns about a house, and there already was a nuisance situation taking place with that house. The owner does not live in Belle Plaine. I was having issues getting him served with the abatement orders. I actually just drove to his house, finally, and I served it personally. I haven't checked it this week. That's on this tomorrow to see if he's cleaned up the outside of the house. So that abatement order just deals with the stuff that's on the outside of the house, the debris. He's got somebody staying in there. I don't know if he's living there or what, but there was a lot of stuff thrown outside the house. He was burning some of it. He got cited for illegal burning. There's a trailer in the back that's got, a mattress and a bunch of junk loaded up on it. I don't know if it's still there. It was last time I drove by. So but again, that just pertains to the stuff outside the house. It doesn't have anything to do with the structural integrity of that house. I think if we were going to go that route, the roof, we need to have it inspected by Mike. So that's what I got for you.
Question for the chief. What can we do about Oak property in the disintegration of that tarp on that?
We can look at the nuisance, I'm sure there's something we can cite him with, but the issue is who do we cite, right? So we can't, he's no longer living, so we would really have to cite the estate.
But we don't know if there
We
is
don't
one
know if
yet.
there's an estate yet, as far as I know, there's not.
That's kind of what the mother just,
Right, but it does lead,
it's not like there's a lot of great assets in this estate.
there's one of, the fact that there's nuisances that exist on this property would be one factor that the court would consider if we were to go like a 657A route where we would acquire title to the property. That's an option we may be able to look at, but again, it's who do we cite, and if there's no estate open, we would just have to cite a potential estate, heirs at law, there'd be a whole list of people we'd have to try to get service on.
Should we have him begin the work on preparing the nuisance complaint on that property though, and then talk with you on,
Who do we serve? though? That's
But
the
yeah,
problem.
there's nobody to serve yet.
but there's gonna be.
I would say,
Maybe with the three of us could work together and I can, since I've had contact, maybe I could reach out and try to feel it out.
if nothing else, we should start taking photographs.
Is there even an estate established?
I don't
Because if
believe
there's not,
I don't believe there's an estate established yet, but if we go the 657A route, we can show that photographs were taken in October of 21, and then when we get to court, who knows when we can say, here they are back then, here they are now, nothing's been done.
Maybe this one on Main Street too,
That was,
owned by the same deceased.
Yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
wasn't there a previous nuisance complaint on that?
there was.
Yeah.
There was. I mean, that's also evidence that would be used, but the fact,
but wasn't that a mowing one?
I think so. There was inspection
Oh, yeah,
The home,
there's that.
yes.
That overall, but now there's a problem with the tarp.
so we would have to do a separate new one. Is that what you're saying?
well, we wouldn't necessarily have to show that there's a cited nuisance, but we'd be able to prove that there's a nuisance from the previous one, current documentation, and then when we got to court.
So we have nuisance building and then nuisance abatement for exterior nuisance.
So I mean, it's all about making sure we have the documentation to prove it. and
So
pictures.
we need to get pictures of the property that exists, yes.
There's wood in the back too, stacks of wood that he was gonna put on the front of the cafe. You know, like pallets. It's stacked really,
I
you know,
noticed this sample.
and or whatever. But I mean,
what do you want me to do in regards to the Brandt property? Not the Brandt property, but the neighboring property of Brandt. Anything further?
You've already filed a nuisance against that guy, right?
It has nothing to do with what Brandt was complaining about, though. It was all the exterior debris. You know, Brandt was complaining about the same issues that we were
Yeah.
complaining about with that house.
Can we file nuisance complaints on disintegrating tarps?
I would have to look at the municipal code. I don't know.
Would you check the code and then get back to the chief
Sure.
and see where we can go with that?
I'm sure there's something, I'm sure it's not allowed.
Can you CC me that on as well? Thanks.
I mean, I don't think you want another tarp on the road. That
Yes.
doesn't do any good.
But the disintegration of it all, debris.
Crawl would be better, Chris.
if they
Crawl
allow
over,
a
be a lot
house for a
quicker.
roof and they say that's okay, I mean, after so long they shred. You know what?
Well, that was an old court case, so maybe we
Oh,
got a smarter judge when we go after him this time.
if they had to live next to stuff like that, I don't think they'd agree with it. I mean, it's out of sight, out of mind.
You know how many times this group has said that same thing?
Well, I know, it's ridiculous. It seems like they have more rights than the people that are keeping their places nice, and I don't know. It's mind boggling.
You three work together and let us know so I can inform the council.
That's just like them inspectors, Dave. We should only, if we're gonna have an inspector, one time, not two, not three times, because that's costing the city money.
Yeah, but you have to if they.
I know, but it's just the idea, they're just going around a circle with it. Oh, I want you to send in another inspector.
Well, we're,
I will say the more documentation, the more evidence you can have, the better shot you have of the judge, just because at the end of the day, you're asking a judge to take away somebody's private property rights,
Yeah.
which are constitutionally protected and
Okay.
fundamentally.
yeah, because we don't want to end up in a situation
No.
where it gets thrown out of court
No.
and we lose because we didn't do our homework.
Okay.
So we'll just have to, but as you can see, it's not the easiest process in the world.
Just jump through the hoops.
Well, I just want you guys to know, we're jumping as
I know.
fast as we can, but
The slow-
Well, at least you're not being threatened.
That's,
I'm serious.
that's my.
Not
no.
anymore.
No, I'm serious. I mean, that's,
You
you
know, I
know,
hate to
this
see
is a,
somebody
this is a
go.
problem that'll get cleaned up, but
Fences make good neighbors. I mean, black neighbors.
let's go to agenda item number 10. Look at that, you have a solar report. You haven't discussed it yet, or looked at it, or found it in your packet, but you also have your monthly treasurer's report and budget report, and Sandy's here to answer any of your questions, and Sandy and Steve can explain the solar stuff to you.
So in going through the treasurer's report, we have 3 funds that currently are sitting negative: the general fund, road use tax, and the landfill garbage fund. All 3 of those funds, although they are all currently negative, they're all better than they were a month ago. So they're all creeping in the right direction. I think we're doing the right things in those 3 areas to improve them. But they are still negative at this point. What I would love to point out, just because I feel like I should point out a good thing once in a while instead of just the negatives. Water, if you look at the water fund, it continues to gain every month. The operating account is now almost $73,000 positive, plus in the black, which is all good. So I'm very excited about that. It continues to move in the right direction. The sewer fund also slowly continues to make steady gains. Its sewer total is now a little over 105,000 to the good. And that's despite, where we're sitting with the negatives on the sewer basin, assuming we don't get hit with something larger than what we've got approved for there. As far as the P&L report goes, this covers 3 months, July through September. So our target for 3 months would be 25%. If you're looking at the percent of budget column. Our total income is on track. We're sitting a little over 26%. So that's right about where we'd like to see it at least. Our proprietary expenses are at 19%, so they're running low, which is good. Our government activities are a little over 24%, so right at about where we'd like to see the target for them. And that brings total expenses to about 21.5%. Continuing to keep a close eye on public works, culture and recreation, general government, and the airport. All 4 of those areas are over their 25% mark, but all 4 of them are monthly making improvements. We had talked about public works because we had done all of the roads expense in the very first month of the fiscal year. So it will continue to work itself off all the way through the year. If no other big surprises happen, that will remedy itself by the end of the year. Culture and recreation, the pool took such a big hit, again, at the beginning of our fiscal year. So a lot of that expense, we won't see through the winter because they'll be closed and not having things. The airport is strictly because of their project. Again, their project is early in the year. It should all work itself out by the end of the fiscal. So those are good. Solar report. So we have 5 areas with solar arrays. I'm reporting on 4 of them. The 4 areas that I am reporting on all have a fairly consistent savings each month. You heard Christy mention that communications at the library has been down since July, sometime in July. I know, Steve, you were working
I just got made aware of that this week,
to get that
so,
repaired.
yeah.
So hopefully we'll get that remedied. So some of the library, I take a little bit tongue in cheek because they're estimating, you know, based on their best guess about what it would be. It will shake out eventually, but based on what we've been paying for, we are seeing savings there. The one area I am not reporting on yet is the well field. Well field has come off of demand rates. I think you heard that from Steve at the last meeting. All I can tell you is the last 2 months worth of bills from Alliant that we have gotten have both been credits. One was a little over $108. The other was a little over $109. Credits. So they're actually paying us to use electricity. I don't know, it's kind of interesting. The 2 months before that, while we were still on demand rate, one was over $1,400, $1,425. The other one was $1,480 expense. So we're seeing a $1,500 to $1,600 swing.
That might be why they didn't want us to get off demand rate
Month over
codes.
month. Yeah, so
It'll, like she said, it's gonna shake out,
it's
but
really great and it's really exciting.
we're going into
The
winter
problem
too.
is, it makes it impossible for me to actually do some type of solar comparison. I don't know. All I can tell you is, here's what we were spending and here's what we're spending now. So our savings is somewhere in there. So it's really good. It's really good and it's very exciting because I always like to see the fact that somebody's gonna give us money instead of us paying them. So I apologize that you don't have one for the well field. It will come eventually. Right now I don't know what to analyze
And
because it's like,
the solar power export is gonna start decreasing as the amount of sunlight hours are going down, but I'm really excited and optimistic about this well field thing, because we were paying them whether we used power or not, just for the opportunity to have the power if we needed it, which we never did.
For years and years.
For years, and I asked them, finally, I was like, why are we on the demand rate code? And they said, well, at one time a field engineer said, well, you don't really need it now, but it's just a matter of time. So we decided to put you on it. I'm just like, there's no recourse.
the only other thing I just am required to make a comment about, the community center has a very small CD that's coming due next week. I have contacted 4 different banks in Benton County, 2 in town here and 2 others. The best rate is coming out of Chelsea on a 19-month CD at a little over 2.25%. The community center board did not want to take any longer term CD than that. They're optimistic that rates are going to continue to go up. So they're hoping if they don't take too long of a CD that we'll be able to improve their rate going forward. Since their CD is not a significant amount of money, it's just under $6,300. Kind of seemed like that was prudent. And I didn't, call 100 other banks to see where they were at, because we were talking about $6,300. So that's where we're going with that one for next week. And that's all I have, unless any of you have something for me.
So where are you getting the estimated cost without solar? How are you deriving that?
So it is interesting, and it is an estimate, which is why I'm using the word estimate. What I do is I take the Alliant rate sheet and I take what consumption would have been if we had not created any of our own energy. Because the consumption number up there is taking what we actually had to purchase in addition to what we used as it was being created, adding them together, and that's what the total consumption is. So when I take the rate sheet that Alliant gave us, like let's say for that first shop one, Total consumption is 1985. Well, let's say for argument's sake, what we only purchased from them was 225. So I take the 1985 and I plug it in where the 225 was at. So if we had to purchase all of that instead of creating some, that's how much we'd have had to spend. Where all of it is straightforward right up until they make some rate adjustments. They call them winter one, summer one, winter two. Those are a little sketchy because on the actual bill, they take what was actually created on, let's say winter one was the first 5 days of that period. Well, they know what was exactly used in those 5 days. All I can do is prorate based on the total consumption, assuming it was used equally across the month. There's no way to know. It has to be an estimate. We didn't buy it, so I have no idea. But that's where the estimating part comes in.
Sure.
But that's how I did that. So I roughly, let me see, Candy's actual expenses. So on the Alliant page, the rate that's in there is a rough number based on what we actually spent, converted back down to a per kilowatt hour. It does vary when you get into certain months, but most of them are, in the neighborhood, pretty close. Summer runs a little differently than winter months, but
Yeah, they're always switching.
yeah, there's a little fluctuation, not a lot. But that's how I came up with estimated number. And I did have conversations with both Alliance and Eagle Point to help me figure out a formula to make those work.
She did a lot of work to make this solar thing happen.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you for doing that. Sure. I'm just happy to see that it really is a savings.
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah, how disappointed are you?
I know.
If you're not saving any money at all, what we went through to put them up. Any questions for any of her reports?
City shop consumption, April 4250. That seems a little, I guess, seems a lot.
and that has to do with the roof not being insulated. When did that get completed?
After that,
Where you at? The
Six.
kilowatt hour
Yeah.
consumption?
yeah,
It
we
was-
were blowing through a lot of energy before that roof got fixed.
When did that repair get completed?
It was done in,
I would guess June, based on the consumption
actually, I
numbers.
was gonna say May. It was done in May.
Well, if it was done in May, then the whole month wouldn't have been under the, less loss, less energy loss category.
I think it was done in May. It was early spring. Do you know?
Yeah,
It was not in
after I started.
April. That would have been April then, right?
Yeah, but I think it was like,
Like a month or so?
yeah.
Yeah.
Other questions? Well, I'm gonna move on to your committee of the whole materials. We'll start with, discuss revising and reviewing 5520 violations and penalty code. on here, she's highlighted the penalties that we only have a fine of $30. And I bring this up because I believe we went to court over an animal running at large. We won the court case, but we still had to pay an officer to go testify. We had to pay a lawyer. And we only won a $30 fine.
That's correct. And I believe in looking at this, is it came to my attention I was asked to draft the proposed order. And I got looking at the fine and I thought it was a little ridiculous. That was only $30 considering the amount of money that the court or the city pays for any type of municipal trial, even if it's just a 15-minute one. You're still paying an officer, I believe, 2 hours minimum. And you're paying me to travel up there as well. And on this particular charge, the defendant didn't even show. So, so I thought that I'd bring it to the city or to Sandy's attention because I believe the fine, when speaking with Jennifer, at one point in time, I believe the fine was higher. But maybe during recodification of our ordinance, it got lowered for some reason. So.
And the reason we put it on committee of the whole is we didn't want to make an assumption about what direction you'd like us to move. Whatever recommendation you guys make, we'll go back and do like we always do. Rewrite the ordinance, bring it to you for approval.
There's other I'm not sure, I apologize, I don't have it in front of me, but there's other violations in that exact same section of the code that have a $200 fine that you can see. So there's just certain ones that are $30, but keeping or sheltering or harboring any dog without vaccination has a $200 fine. Abandoning the animal in city limits, $200 fine. Allow an animal to destroy or damage other property, $200 fine. So it, in my mind, makes sense to at least have that be a standard charge. But the council's free to do what they want.
How frequently do we fine people for these offenses?
Quite often. Well, I mean, the ones that I see come across my, that they plead not guilty to, this is a pretty repeat offense that people tend to plead not guilty on, and then we go to court.
For the at large. But how about some of the others?
I'm not sure. The dog at large or unlicensed dog is the most common.
The real problem is, I think a lot of cat owners think that cats are just okay to run around at large. I mean, my ring goes off at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's about 4 different cats that are around at 2 o'clock in the morning that are setting it off.
Sure.
And you see comments on Facebook where people think it's okay. And I've refrained from stating it's actually not allowed. Dogs aren't allowed to run at large. Now there are cats.
But you're assuming that they belong to somebody too.
I'm sure that they probably do because most people are looking for their cats and saying, we let him out and he hasn't come back. And so I don't know. I'll get a trap and trap them and see who's missing their cat.
Yeah,
I'll
I
find
will
out.
say, I mean, at least from recent memory, I don't have a statistic or anything for you guys, but I will say a lot of these animal at large violations are dog owners for whatever reason. So I think those are the ones that maybe get called in more.
I think dogs are probably easier to catch than cats.
And it's
Yeah.
usually the size issue.
Usually
I mean,
the officer stops
let's be
and
real.
says, come here, and he crawls to the back
Right.
seat. Ain't no cat doing that.
No.
Right. So, but
And dogs are the ones we usually get called in.
right. I mean, it's safe to assume that there's a dog out there that belongs to somebody, as Mary was saying, maybe not so much with the cat, but you don't know, right? So dogs always get called in.
I had a 30-minute conversation with somebody over cats in her yard. And then I found out she was feeding them. And I said, if you quit feeding them, they're not gonna be back. She says, well, I'm worried they're not getting enough to eat, but they're really big, fat cats. And I said, yeah, They got a routine and you're helping.
They go to Mitch's house and they go there.
Or
I don't
bitches
feed 'em.
seeing
Oh, they go to the
he's-
bathroom at
he's
your
got
place?
any Trick or treats, and they come over to hers, and I'm going, how about you just quit feeding them and see if they don't come back?
And the other part of this code section, which is, I don't have the code in front of me, but there is a provision in our municipal ordinances that says if it's not specifically specified, as this one is, that a municipal infraction, you can charge up to $750. So, I mean, I wasn't gonna charge $750 on this particular violation or request that, but when I saw we were limited to only 30, it was,
Well, do you think we should do it more across the board? Like the $200 stage, or what's everybody thinking?
Well, how much typically would cost to the city be when we go to court?
I mean, I don't have an exact number for you, but I mean, you're paying an officer at least 2 hours.
$60.
Okay, you're paying, my travel time up there, which is, 40 minutes each way. And then the court hearing usually lasts 15 minutes to a half hour, depending on if they testify or if they even show up.
So it could be $200 easily.
Easily. I think you're over 200.
And that's not counting if we send an officer up, we usually bring another officer on duty, depending on.
The city's losing money, even if you set it at $200, I would assume, just based off of what I know, that our office charges for these infractions, you're still losing money. Considering,
If you talk about something being a recurring or whatever, a 200 is a whole lot bigger deterrent than $30.
correct. I mean, it's not, these charges aren't in there for the business of the city making money, it's just trying to recoup some of the costs and be prohibitive. But yeah,
You did tell me that nobody showed up to argue the case for the defendant.
Well,
I didn't know that part.
well, sometimes they do. This particular case that happened recently, they filed a not guilty plea. And so the judge is required, or the magistrate's required to set it for trial if they file a not guilty plea at their initial appearance. And then, once they file a not guilty plea, the city attorney's office is required to get the officer and show up and prove our case, which is what we did. So,
I'd felt better if you got to grill him in court. Is this a picture of your dog running in this video?
yeah, and again, there's work that goes in, at least on my end, before I even get to trial, which is I have to get the body cam footage from the officer if it exists, review it, make sure we're, talking about the same incident, and then contacting the officer saying, hey, this one's going to trial, are you available this date? And if not, filing a motion. So the city, even at setting it at 200, will still probably be losing money.
And this is, like, we charge a fine, and if the dog owner or the owner of the animal at large just pays the $30, then that we're not.
Correct. So
This is just in cases where,
yeah, when they plead not guilty. If they show up and say, I'm ready to pay my fine, they pay it, it's done. No big deal.
well, can't you just mail it in?
They can, or they can call the clerk's office and I believe maybe pay it over the phone.
Yeah.
But these are the cases where they show up for their initial appearance, they don't pay the fine, and they say, no, I'm pleading not guilty because of whatever the reason is. Any reason you can think of, they try to use. Sometimes they're not legal justifications. In fact, most times they aren't, but if I have a not guilty plea with a phone number, I try to proactively reach out to the defendants and say, hey, what are you looking at here? Is there any way we can, what's your side of the story? If you have any type of justification, you can present to the judge, or you can pay your fine. I'll draft a guilty plea for you, stop down at my office and sign it, and then you won't even have to go to court on Wednesday. I've done that several times where I can get a hold of the defendant, but if the defendant leaves a number on their not guilty plea that's no longer in service, or they don't answer, or they don't return my phone call, then I have to show up.
Do you have any idea of how often they're pleading not guilty versus just giving in and paying the fine?
I don't, because I don't get indexed on the case unless they plead not guilty.
Okay.
So I only see the ones that they plead not guilty on.
If we put the fine at 200 and you call them, can you negotiate and say, well, we'll cut you a deal and pay 50?
No, it would be set at the standard 200.
Okay.
Published.
It's published.
You can't have both. You say if you pay it, it's $30. If we go to court, it's 200.
No.
May I chime in here for a second? This actually was part of the comprehensive nuisance things that we did when I was on the council when I was a young man. And when they came out, everything was $200 fine. And the first time we had a snow emergency, we wrote out like $8,000 worth of tickets. So the council at the time kind of went through on a probability thing and said, what's the probability that this is going to be taken to court, you know, and went through and, you know, at the time, if someone had to pay $200, the probability is they probably take it to court every time, which we'd still be losing money. So it's kind of like a guessing game. That's why some of them are 200 and some of them are 30. So like, you know, there's a lot of these things. It's not just animals. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
I just remember that conversation happening
And I don't know how long ago was that.
early 2000s.
Okay, so I mean, if you just judge based off inflation, I mean, $30.
Yeah.
Then what would that be now? You know, what's the? I guess that's your guys' job. Is what's that cutoff point where somebody would just pay a fine? I'll tell you, at least again, the ones that I see, they plead not guilty and they'll go to court to try to argue it, or they just don't think that the officer will show up or that we won't show up, but we always show up. I think there's a misconception that police officers don't show up for their court dates. That's not been my case or my experience. They're happy to show up for 32 hours or 15 minutes.
What's your pick, council? Leave it, raise it.
I don't think we leave it.
Give us a number we can work with to rewrite this.
I mean, my initial suggestion and thought was to keep it to 200, like everything else in that section, just because then it's easy. But again, there are violations in the code that allow a city to go up to $750. I don't think that's necessary, but
You're using the phrase go up to, but you can't use that. Each one has to have their own particular.
correct, because it's specified out the section violations and penalties for this particular violation. And you could do, if you wanted to, you could add to it in your creative saying that the first violation is X amount, any future violations within a year or any future violations.
Or a municipal infraction.
Or, so the first allow or permit such animals to run at large, first violation, $30, second violation, 200. And then I guess it'd be up to myself or the citing officer to figure out if they've been cited before. This individual recently, it was not their first citation, is my understanding based off the conversation with the officer.
So they think, well, $30, what the hell,
I could see going like 100 on the first violation and then 200 after that. I mean, 100 at least isn't 30, but it's not.
Just for what? Each one of these is.
Yeah, each one of them is 30, go to 100 on first violation, 200 on any after violation. That way you're driving home your idea, but you're also not creating this felony.
So yeah, language would have to be added to each one of those sections specifying that.
You can't just put et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
Ditto.
Yeah,
What the mayor said as a motion.
put them right underneath each other, so you can go little arrow.
Ditto.
to it. Ditto.
Arrow.
This isn't a motion kind of thing. You're in committee.
Well, how do
That's
you
just-
guys- how do you
right,
guys
we're
feel
just-
about just this whole entire section doing it that way?
Putting it in.
Not just the $30 ones, but
The sliding scale for every single
yeah,
100,
yeah.
200.
Like, for example, number 10, keep, shelter, or harbor any unvaccinated dog or cat, $200. You know,
Do you want to drop those to 100?
100
First offense?
first offense, and if they don't do it,
Or do you want to have 200 be the first offense and something bigger than that be the second offense?
I guess it depends on the council's view as far as, is harboring an unlicensed dog the same as a vaccinated dog? Like, do we require stiffer penalties for vaccinations?
for
versus-
stiffer stuff, or,
Yeah. And that's a policy decision. It's not a legal.
Well, also, if we do it that way, there'd be an awful lot of record keeping that would have to be maintained. To know this is first, this is second, this is third.
Here you go.
I will say that it's a little bit easier because the dog at large seems to be, if there's a violation, we know who those repeat offenders are. The vaccination part, it's a little bit more long-term. Part of record keeping.
And do you want this first violation versus second and subsequent violations to be over a particular period of time or just indefinite? Like it's my second offense in 10 years or it's my second offense in a year?
Per household or per animal or per,
Don't make it too complicated, I guess,
Yeah.
is what I would say. So,
I can see how we're kind
Yeah.
of going in
bring
that
things up a
direction.
little too
Yeah.
much.
yeah,
It's like, how long does a dog live? Well,
right.
Per licensed animal. they are
pull out the rap sheet.
On Skippy.
Picture of the dog,
Ah.
description,
Well, well, Hank.
Turn to the left.
criminal activity of the
You laugh
dog.
about it now, but if I have to prove that this is the same dog, it might get difficult for a judge. And, I don't have photographs.
Got prints.
We got his paw print,
Yeah, so, I mean,
paw print and nose print.
I would suggest don't get too specific on, making it dog or cat specific.
And we really want to actually down there take a nose print. and paw print.
She'd probably do it.
She would.
Or going in, I mean, just for more stuff, going back to what Mitch had said, while we can't say specifically if you plead guilty, we'll do $50. If we don't plead guilty, we'll do 200. You may be able to write the ordinance to say, allow or permit animals to run at large up to $200, and then leave it in the discretion of the city attorney's office and the judge. The only drawback there is if I request $200 because we would go to court, the judge could still say, nah, this is their first offense, we're gonna do $30. If you leave it up to a certain dollar amount, you give discretion to the judge and also give discretion to my office if they plead guilty, we can negotiate something. So discretion works, it works for the judge as well.
Excuse myself for
How
a second.
often in the past has the judge said, this is ridiculous?
As far as the dollar amount,
No, the charge.
the judge would never express that type of opinion on a court case.
I thought that and this is just hearsay, but I thought that, like the barking, howling, yelping disturbance type thing was, not looked on kindly as going to court.
I have not had a contested case on that. but I can tell you from the magistrates, the interactions I've had with the magistrates, they wouldn't really say like, you know, this is ridiculous and throw it out. They would just issue an order saying, not guilty or guilty. At least the current magistrates. It may have been different previously with previous magistrates, but I haven't had that particular charge be contested, so I don't know what their opinion on it is.
Okay.
It's pretty much the unlicensed dog at large for animal violations that we see.
And if they all paid their $30 right away, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. But the other side of it is trying to recover our costs. If we're fine having them pay a $30 fine, knowing that it's gonna cost us more than that.
Substantially more than that.
Right, and I would say too, if, as Steve said, these rates haven't been updated since the early 2000s. You know, is $30 really an appropriate minimum? Or is $50 or something, you know?
Can I ask a question? So, like, let's just take allow or permit such animal and run at large. If you change that to say up to $200, what does it get written for then? I mean, how would they pay it without it going to court?
Right, that's a good point. So I don't know, they would pay, I mean, they have to, because it's not a scheduled violation, you just can't have payment. I don't, they have to have an initial appearance. So I suppose I'm not sure if you said at that time. I would be more comfortable if it just said a flat dollar. I think we stretch out standard across the board, so nobody can be my office or the judge and say, well, it's $30 for this guy now.
Don't have to make a decision tonight. I can bring this back to you at the next meeting. I don't want to think about
We'll spend it all anyway.
it. Yeah, but we want to give orders on what to write.
If
You're not voting
I don't
on
wanna
it, but
revise an ordinance unless I know what you want me to revise.
I can,
Or at least some.
I can provide some type of standard bill to the city that would help the council make a decision, so I can find them outside. So that you know exactly on a standard dog at large, you know, what's the cost on the city attorney.
So really, you could say $100 first offense, $200 for second or other offenses within a calendar year,
Subsequent offenses. Yeah.
subsequent event.
Yeah, you could do within a
I
calendar.
mean, that would set the time frame. If someone's paying $300 in a year, you kind of think maybe they'd get the clue to pick up the poop or not let the animal run at large, because that's a chunk. $30, you know, but you know, 100 and then possibly 300 if you do it again, that at least gets someone's attention. I mean, that's kind of the whole idea, is to have a little bit of deterrence and following what the rules are as far as pets.
You know what? Usually they don't get charged. If they got a tag on, they usually don't get charged for first offense. Dog running at large, we usually take the damn dog back to them.
Well, because I think the whole thing is allow or permit. I think if a dog actually escapes and it's tagged, then you just, you know, give the animal
So
back.
when it comes to a charge, it's probably their second offense, unless they're not tagged, and then it will be the first one. But I know they have a list of dog tags in the car. So if they pick one up, they look it up, take it back to the address of the owner.
And this last case was, by the time the officer got to the scene, the dog was already back in the owner's possession, so that they didn't actually pick the dog up. It was a neighboring property owner that said, hey, this dog was in my yard. And the defendant said, yeah, it went up there and, you know, it ran around, but it came back and didn't do anything, type of deal. So, and this person had been cited before for the same dog running at large previously. So it's not, I don't know how many first offenses versus subsequent offenses, but at least the ones in recent memory have been subsequent offenses.
So this was just somebody that was watching the neighbor's dog come into their yard and turn around a couple times and went home and.
I don't know how long it was there. I just know that it was not within the.
Actually, think it was senior apartments. And the dog was from not the senior apartments.
Cause you're supposed to have control of your animal, or have it on your property.
I like Mitch's idea.
I can draft it that way. I mean, doesn't mean you guys can't change your mind when you actually see it next time.
So are you suggesting that for these yellow items, we do 100/200 and the other ones we just leave at 200 or?
Yeah, because I think the other ones are a little bit more stiffer violation than.
I'll draft it that way, and you can see what you think when you look at it.
All right.
Cool.
What do I? All right. First, no, I guess I kind of committee of the whole. All I put the water supply engineering report. Don't even know how many of you brought yours. Any questions you have? We're not ready to give results of where we're at with the filter testing we're doing, but if things go as positive as we're hoping, I think we can modify the cost of this whole project considerably. But I know they have taken samples with the filter out of well 6 and
Jay?
sending them off to be tested.
We got Exhibit A and Exhibit B. We do have these tests going off to independent laboratory for testing because we don't have. Jay hooked up the filter and has been.
I know, that's good.
Is he gonna have any candy left for trick or treat?
No,
That's
but
what
you
I,
know.
that's what I was just saying.
This here is raw water out of 6, and this is what the filters do.
I can see it from here.
But Keystone just got bought out, the lab we use. So we gotta get new work orders to get our water testing now, so.
Our permit changed too, our statewide permit for the whole city, so all of our testing, mandatory testing changed. And we're trying to get all that hammered out with the new company. I mean, and we're also trying to do all these, what are called special tests for all of the water that Jay and Nick are sampling throughout the day and trying to get a trend so we can figure out how well this is working. But I mean, that right there, that's.
And how long the filter will last then, or that's what we're
Yeah,
trying to
so
figure out or calculate?
we're running a lot of
30
different
minutes.
tests.
Yeah.
This filter that is a test filter, it's the size of a water softener, but it's the media that's inside,
Mhm.
how many gallons you can run through it, when you need to backwash it, how long it has to backwash. Because an RO system, I mean, in your report, I believe I saw that it would need 32,000 gallons a day to flush itself out.
Right.
So what you're asking, Garrett, is the filter's gonna last, it's just how long the media in it will last, and that's what we have to change out.
5 to 7 years, they're guessing, depending on how much we ran it.
So the more you backwash it,
Okay.
you know.
Mhm.
Right now, we're running 3 gallons a minute in this little one, so you gotta figure that well there will probably do about, what is it, about 290?
Something like that.
290 gallons a minute at max peak, so normally we gotta turn down, I think we were blending about, last time we had it on, I think we were doing just a hair over 100 gallons a minute with it, so. Yeah. pass it
If
around.
nothing else, that looks positive.
Yeah, I mean,
Now,
for the,
now if the chemical testing comes through.
So what we don't know, we know that there's excellent iron and manganese removal, and that's the color and the taste and some of the odor. What we don't know yet
That's
is
all.
the calcium carbonate, which is the hardness, the white stuff that appears on your faucets, that's calcium. We don't know how the efficacy of that removal yet. So, thanks, Jay.
Good thing Kramer's in here. He will Dory's a drink.
You wanna drink this one?
They might get mad at me.
One's natural light, one's,
But it's
Yeah.
going, that's positive.
yeah.
Yeah.
So these
That's
are
good news.
our independent research. You know, we have our engineering team working on stuff and we're also working on stuff so we can try to figure out, you know. Thanks for bringing that.
So they will keep, we'll keep you informed. We're gonna find out what this does first. Then we can probably start making the bigger plans. How much we can run this well, if this works the way we hope it does, how much we can run this, and maybe you don't need any new wells, or maybe we need one new well because our 4 other ones are older and they start wearing out in terms of just the piping on it. So, but I'm hoping we're not gonna be drilling into any Jordan Aquifer or any of that other stuff, and so I'll just, this may stay on your committee of the whole stuff. For a
We
while.
appreciate independent research because I think it'll save a lot of money.
So if you don't have any big questions, and I didn't know we were gonna show those models tonight, but I'm glad we did.
Cost of all of it,
What's that?
of the different wells.
That might be on a different spreadsheet
Oh,
entirely.
okay.
Oh, your well report?
No, of what it was gonna cost to do each one. I thought I brought that.
In that
Oh,
report.
it wasn't in this
No,
one?
that was in the
Okay.
I think it was in that.
one they
It must have been the one I left at home.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the
Yeah.
PER. This is what went to the
Oh.
USDA.
It's in
I left that one at home.
Yep.
Yeah.
So is that one a different one?
It was part of what we got last meeting.
Oh, and I wasn't.
We
there.
got
Well,
that and
No,
this.
they
you didn't
gave
get
us,
So I need that thing back. I thought it was an extra one.
well, but here,
That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
that's the summary they.
4.2 million, 5.7 million.
Well, I mean, if this works, that's great, but I think we should still consider probably going to drill. It's only gonna get more expensive as time goes on to drill.
Oh, I
Yeah,
know.
it's just,
Because if you're killing 5, well, you know the 5 is dead.
yeah, we're in the process
So
of that. But it's just, do you want to drill 300 feet, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Right.
I'm just
No, I
rough.
agree with
I'm
you. And
balling those.
let's not play kick the can down the road.
Mhm.
Let's take care of it. But if we can make well 6 viable, that
Yeah.
gives us some.
Because we know that water is there.
Mhm.
Well, that will be a continuing issue for you to look at. The item 12 is review the employee handbook. Steve and Sandy were the ones that went through and updated the handbook, and then Sandy went through and did this summary on the front that tells you basically what changes were made, and many of them were changes based on city resolutions that we had passed. So I'll let Steve and Sandy answer questions over the handbook, because they're the two that worked on it.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to just read, I mean, do you want me to go through every change or?
I don't think I need that. That's all.
Mhm.
That's all
If
here.
there's questions on the changes that you see, let me know. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The only question I had was on the little chart that went in on extra pay for utility licenses and certifications. I just thought there might be some extra language put in there.
What page you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, 6. Under compensation. Talking about something to the effect that adjustments to base pay will be effective upon notification of each license or certification achieved. Or, you know, it doesn't specify when that kicks in.
Other than they have a form they fill out that kicks in on the date that's on the form.
I know what you mean though.
Yeah.
In other words.
Just hit the next
they have-
payroll
they
cycle.
have-
Yeah.
They have to show us the certification is what you're
Right,
saying.
and then does it show up in the, as of the
Next
date
pay
of,
period
of,
or
yeah, the
effective
next
date.
pay period or whatever, it's just, it doesn't get specific about that.
Yep. I can tell you in practice, what we've done in practice is when they've passed it.
Go back to the date of, taking the exam, if they pass it.
They're usually pretty excited when they pass it, so they let us know immediately.
Find out the same day.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not like there's this big wait period where you don't find out for 3 weeks.
It's a celebration.
It's all online.
Yeah. There are different ways to take it, and then the tester would know immediately after they're done if they passed or not, and then they blow the trumpets when they get home.
Go in online, you have to go in online and pay the fee for the license to become effective.
Okay, but this all
$40
happens,
or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't remember
this all
exactly.
happens in a short period of time.
Yeah, this is like, they come back that day and I either go online with them because they'll come in and stand behind me and we'll log in. And we'll either do it that day or sometimes maybe the next day if it's been late in the afternoon when they get back. I think the longest period of time in between them passing and us making it effective was like 2 days because it was like late on a Friday. Didn't pay the fee till Monday morning. Yeah, usually they're really excited. I passed something, let's go, come on. So,
Yeah, because usually they're waving the form in my face as soon as I come in and sign it.
Well, it's exciting. It's
Well,
exciting to
yeah,
get
I'm sure.
certified. It's very exciting.
I didn't realize it was that almost instantaneous, so.
Yeah, then when they were long form and dots, you'd still know by the end of the day, like when you'd fill in like
I mean, this
circles.
last
That's
one that-
machine grade.
Yeah.
This last one with Nick, he passed on one day, I don't know, let's just say it's Wednesday, I don't remember. He passed on that day. The next morning, and we went into the system, paid the fee, and before he left my office, on the state site, it shows that he has that certification. So it's just that quick.
Is this the final revision of the handbook, or are we gonna do more revisions?
This is final unless you guys tell me to do something different.
There was just some things, page 17, 6.12 vehicle and equipment policy. Full-time employees may use the city garage and tools to wash and work on personal vehicles with permission of city administrator. As a municipality, I don't think that we should be allowing tax dollars to be used for personal items along with equipment usage. If larger equipment is requested on page 18, backhoe loader, under extenuating circumstances, use must be approved by the department head and see. I mean, that's just my
No,
opinion.
no, I'm just saying, all I did was
Version.
the prior
Yeah,
version.
that's why I was asking if
I
there's more
updated-
revisions coming
Updated
or
things
the
that we
final one.
passed in the past.
That seems strange.
I brought a few things in because Public Works
Exactly.
is no longer a union.
Mhm.
So there are a few things that were specified in the union contract that were never in our handbook. So I brought some of those things over just so everything's,
Mhm.
this is what we're actually doing as of today. If there are other changes that you want made.
Our vacation
That would
policy
be a good
changed.
time.
You found typos,
Yeah.
clothing allowance, stuff like that.
Yeah, if
This
you guys
was-
want
yeah.
something else out.
This was just cleanup versus
Right.
content, you know? So,
Yeah, that's why I
But
was
if you
asking if
wanna
it was a
change
final
content,
revision or if
now
it was
would
gonna
be a
be
great
more.
time to
So
do
if this
that.
is the final one, we should do
Yeah,
some revisions.
I'd like to read through this too, and then if we can talk
Can
about it.
we table it for now?
Sure.
And I'm saying that on my point, because I just got my packet Monday, I didn't get it on Friday, and I basically just kind of.
Yeah, this isn't an action item anyway, so yeah.
No, this one was.
Was it? I
That's
thought
right.
this was committee of the whole, sorry.
That's not in committee of the whole.
Oh,
So table.
Yeah, we'll just, guys, review it and come back and you can have a discussion and decide if there are issues in there.
Is everybody okay with that? I mean, because I did not, I mean, I just breezed through it quickly.
I just went through the changes, so. And they all seem to
And I
make
would like
sense.
to, because I noticed that too, what Garrett had just pointed out. And I would like to, really actually read every one of them.
Great.
All right, that one. That takes you to agenda item number 13, which is discuss for possible approval of Class C beer permit, Class B wine permit, and Sunday sales for Dollar Gen Corp., which is your new Dollar General store, number 6648 at 405 13th Street. Any questions on that one?
Is this just, what have they been doing in the interim?
Out the back door.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of that.
Is it,
I think it's actually
The renewal of the old.
renewal of the old because the building, the site changed.
I just wondered, it was just a question of permanent premise transfer.
If not, I'll take a motion for this one.
I move to approve the Class C beer permit, Class B wine permit, and Sunday sales for Dollar Gen Corp.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. City administrators report.
all right. We had talked about the emergency management offer, essentially, for when the decommissioning of the Dwayne Arnold Energy Plant. They had kind of shot us a price that they thought it would cost about $8,000 per siren to move them and reprogram to our signal. The mayor and I were both under the impression that the county was kind of quarterbacking that and
No,
coordinating it.
The Alliant Energy through Lynn County.
That's right.
Had set it up to have a company move these things.
But that I learned today was only for Lynn County. So,
That's never what we were told in emergency management.
so the company that Lynn County is using is Frontline out of Minnesota. So essentially these are not like our sirens. They're not hardwired. They're not line voltage. They're solar powered and they're a different brand. So you can basically drop them in anywhere. They power themselves and they communicate with county dispatch or with our system, and we can set them off. The ones that I feel like these are more expensive probably than the ones that we have, because the ones we have are hardwired. These are more sophisticated. When we had those damaged in the derecho, what were they, like $30,000 a piece just to repair? So I'm going to investigate how much Frontline would charge to pull the pole where they're at out in the country somewhere.
Fill in the hole.
And fill in the hole and then place the pole in a place that we'd like to put them. So these are over in kind of west or east central Benton County area. Or if we were able to do some of that ourselves, and then they just come in and reprogram them. So I'm gonna do a little more investigating on that because that's something I just learned about today from Scott Hansen
Well, we just got the letter last week and all of a sudden it was,
to change.
you are now responsible. Here's the map. Go find your siren and pole, pull it, plug it, and go put it up yourself.
Road trip. But so I asked for dibs on two because I thought we would put, if we put one over in this side of town and then one maybe in between the schools, we'd have total coverage of all 4 quadrants. Because the way the hills are in town, sometimes if the way it hits a hill, it doesn't get on the other side of the hill. So we'd have to kind of do a study to figure out where we put them. But once I get a price on how much it would cost to move each one, the units are free, but we have to pay them to move them and program them, if that makes sense. So I'll be contacting them to get us some pricing on that. I was going to talk about the filter, but Jay already kind of brought us up to speed on that. And we talked about the testing and getting the results back in. Jack, filter guy Jack's from Seppermatic, he's been really supportive and has called a lot of times and see how it's going. And Jay and I have talked to him, and Nick and I have talked to him. He's pretty nice to work with. I got contacted by Kirkwood that they're ready to go through the punch list for the Kirkwood building whenever we're ready, so that we can go through and look at all the things that we talked about that we wanted changed, and make sure that all that work has been duly completed. And then their attorney has reached out to you, correct, Gage?
Yeah, I believe we got an email on that. I don't know if Jennifer's responded. I have not.
Okay, I just know that that was sent.
That they need that they needed basically to give with us a fine time for transfer of the building.
Yeah, if that's what everybody wants to do.
I don't know if that takes place after the punch list, or that was my impression.
Yeah, I'd like to go through and make sure they did everything that they said they were going to do and inspect it. And I might take some staff with me to dig into the details.
Yeah.
So I think it looks great. They did a good job on it. The all new electrical to both buildings underground. They used to be overhead aerial. They weren't up to code, so put them underground. The downspouts weren't big enough, so those are increased in the gutters. New roof. There were some things on the inside. I can't recall off the top of my head. There were a couple of brown spots in the roof where I thought maybe the HVAC was leaking. I don't think the roof was ever leaking because that was a slate asbestos roof and would last forever. But I told them, I was like, we're not taking that building with an asbestos roof on it. Period.
Right.
And they like, no problem. Sandy and I walked through it. Ashley and I walked through it. It has a lot of office assets inside, desks, tables, chairs, office supplies, that we can source for the City Hall remodeling project, and get some of that stuff updated, and maybe so it's a little easier for them to stay organized. So we're gonna have a bunch of little, filing cabinets here and there. The clerks will make the call on that. And the library had called dibs on a few chairs, but it's full of stuff. So that's something that I'm going to be looking to do in the next week sometime. So with our employees, the decision has been made this week to restructure all the public works departments. If you look at the page 38, Exhibit A on the organizational chart, under the city administrator, you'll find the Public Works, all of Public Works, and there's no further breakdowns on that chain of command. So in order to work more efficiently, save money, and just have an overall better program with better communication and clearly defined goals, there will be no more Public Works supervisor. Have eliminated that position. There are other changes to come, job descriptions, who's doing what, who can't do what, who can do what. And I'll be writing those up next week. So all of Public Works will report directly to me. We'll have team meetings. We'll have, I'll be able to have more oversight over what's happening on projects and spending, and, you know, set up the each kind of department within a department. Does anybody have any questions on that? I can't get too far into it yet because I don't have that stuff written up.
What brought? What, I'm sorry.
We filled the position that was open.
Yes, so the water wastewater position, we offered to John Kolash. He accepted. He's been working with Jay and Nick. He's a quick study. He started last Wednesday. And if he's not with Nick, he's with Jay. Jay's had him in a big piece of equipment, the excavator, the loader, truck.
Yeah, but I'm in dump truck too.
So he is very quick to learn all that stuff. Yep. So far so good. He's highly motivated. He's very dedicated to the community and wants to learn. He's really hungry to learn as much as he can. It's cool to see.
What brought on this change?
We had some discussions and just didn't think it was working out the way it was structured, and saw that I had the bandwidth to do this, so decided that it's time to try to make things work better. I don't quite know how to answer that, at this time.
And to save money.
Yeah, number one thing is to save money, save time, get things done faster.
So one of the first things that's gonna be done is every piece of machinery in our city is gonna be under the control of Jay. He'll make the determination on whether we're gonna fix it in-house or send it out of house.
And inspections and all the
We
maintenance.
found out he's also a DOT inspector, so we don't have to send our trucks out to be inspected. We do it in-house.
Yeah, so Jay will be over all the maintenance operations in the city shop. That'll be his workshop. He will build with the money we save over time. We'll build a workshop in there for him so that he can do things and get it done. And he's got a nice place to work with tools and everything in order, organized, prioritized. That sum it up. So what the term is, if we have to call it something, it's called lateral leadership. So we have the different individuals. So, Nick is obviously in charge of all the water and wastewater operations and the distribution system because of the DOT certifications. He possesses all of those. John is new. He will work with, he can work with whomever. His primary goal is to get certified with water, wastewater, and distribution. But he will float between Nick and Jay on projects. Jay, as you know, will be doing the role that we talked about, and other things like Jay has saved a lot of money at the sewer plant by identifying motors that needed replaced, pumps that needed replaced, where we would spend several $1,000s calling in someone, and it would take a long time just calling it in, ordering it up, planning it out, getting it going, getting it done, saving money.
Am I correct in interpreting that? He's trying to determine ahead of time when something's.
We want to get proactive.
adjusted
Yeah. So
instead of
yes,
something goes out and then
it's like
it's like the whack-a-mole game.
yeah, we want to get to be proactive. We've tried to be proactive. Chuck tried to be proactive. You know, the more we can do ourselves, you know, when we're confident in our abilities and we have the skill sets and we have these highly skilled people that we have hired to entrust with our systems, they can perform the work, learn how to do it. And if they determine this is out of my wheelhouse, or this, we don't have the equipment to do this, then it'll be outsourced only after scrutinization. It's going to save a lot of money. So then Al and Dave will have assignments and expectation. Everybody will have expectations and assignments and accountability and checking in. And it is a big change, so it's gonna, there may be some growing pains, but I have just made this priority one for me and the community so that we could get a better handle on the spending and get more bang for our buck. And I mean, I think you've seen what the team building so far has done with the water department and the water fund. It's working. It's going to work in sewer. It's going to work in public works, because with, you know, with the census that was mentioned earlier going down, our road use tax is diminished. And so we need to, you know, the fastest money earned is money that's not wasted. So that's the mantra, is saving money.
And I think you saw, which Sunday, 2 Sundays ago, once again, we had a water main break. Our guys went on and fixed it. We would have been leaking water until Monday or Tuesday previously, and bring a crew in to dig that. It was all done by 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. And I think that continues to be just what Steve and our guys are trying to do, is save money and do in-house work where we can.
The other thing with this getting off demand rate code, the reason we could never get off demand rate code is because you had to go 12 straight months without going over a certain amount. And there was always a month. We were always on the line. And part of the reason that we've been able to go off the demand rate code is because we're not pumping as much water, because we're fixing, you know, it takes a lot of electricity to pump the water out of the ground up to the water tower. And, you know, as we find those, we're attacking them, and just trying to be vigilant. The ground's super dry and it's thirsty. So, you know, if there are leaks out there, they're not surfacing, you know, they're just being absorbed into the ground, going into a sewer line or a storm sewer line. The first one we found when Jay got hired, you and Nick went up and started looking in sewers and storm sewers for irregular flows, because they're like, we've got a leak. We don't have any idea how to, you know, it's a crapshoot. So they looked in and found a sewer that had excess water running through it and tracked it down as closely as we could. And that was the first one we fixed on 9th Avenue.
Well,
And,
that's one thing I've noticed is they are by far getting fixed in a timely manner. I mean,
yeah, they have to.
yeah, yeah. I
They
mean-
have
I mean,
to.
I kudos to the crew.
Yeah, they're amazing.
They're, you know,
This is exactly what we want. This is exactly what we need. This is how we can pay for stuff. Two, we build up an account, we build up some money and then we can fix things as we go or upgrade things without having to borrow money or raise the rates. Rates will need to raise as rates need to raise, but we don't have to make a big jump like other communities are jumping to, $20, $30, whatever. You look at some other ones, they're a lot higher. So I'm really proud of the crew. And so back to, this is my number one priority. So some of the other things that I've been working on, I'm going to try to either delegate or reprioritize some of those things. My FEMA projects are still priorities. And we have one insurance project that's still hanging out there. But
we're getting closer.
yeah. So yeah, my focus is going to be on water, public works, fixing stuff, saving money.
Any other questions?
Mhm.
Mayor's report, sure. I haven't been to a meeting lately. But I will be tomorrow night at the landfill. And then Friday, I have lunch duty to make root beer floats for the high school and the junior high. I have no start of Red Ribbon Week, I guess.
Put the root beer in first.
Good advice.
May have to try a few myself and see what I can do with my blood sugar there. And then next week I have bent development and I have the Easy Cog meeting. So it's just runs in where you go a couple weeks where you don't have. Yeah, I got bent development, Easy Cog that both meet next week. So nothing new in that. Bed development, bed landfill, I guarantee you, there's a resolution in there to buy a piece of equipment, so it will take longer than 15 minutes. We will talk a lot longer on equipment purchases, but it'll be done in 30 minutes. Nothing on correspondence, nothing on old business, no resident comments unless
That was a quick no.
Don't forget your bottles. I just had one quick thing. I don't know what is going on with the YouTube system, but I dropped 3 times today. And I'd like to investigate another option, like maybe having just a city council Facebook page or something like that that just streamlines this thing. And it's just a lot to handle. And I'm trying to pay attention and stuff. And this, and when other people are in the room, the Wi-Fi signal gets messed up, and it's just, I'd rather be more present at the meetings than trying to.
Exactly. You need to have a system where it's on and then it's off.
Right.
Yeah, because we don't want the public to think that.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody out there.
We're going into super secret. We don't want you to hear stuff, so that watch out the TV goes on.
I think Garrett could see me struggling over here.
we look like you're struggling from over here.
By the way, MediaCom went off at midnight last night, so I did call and say what's going on, and then I got this.
You got the recording.
I went to Kinetic, and that's the fiber optic, and I'm very pleased with it. It's quick. Because that's why
revising and fixing, which that's their code word for saying and do something to raise your rates. We're not going into closed session. I don't have resident comments, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
One second, Jay, I'm pleased and blessed as a council member to have you on the team. I know you're really working hard, and I know we can all see it, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Now I'll make a motion.
No, wait,
Oh.
I've got one thing. I told Community Development Holiday Homecoming
No.
Committee that I would report that their original, Teresa Herbson was here at the last meeting to report on their idea for the lighting on Main Street. They abandoned that idea for the spotlights because they weren't bright enough. So now they've got another idea for little individual lighted trees throughout the downtown area, which they would need about 36 of them. They're gonna get a couple to try them out though first. And it would be
Artificial trees?
approximately the same cost as what we had talked about before.
Artificial type
They're
trees?
called fairy light trees. Teresa had
They're called what?
fairy light trees. They're not artificial green trees. They're just lit trees like little fairy
Okay.
lights. Just stop.
Fir-
And
First winter storm, let's see what happens.
so anyway, they're
And
gonna
we
order.
still
a
do
couple.
have, like, we found the bill on those other things. So they're
Mhm.
like 8 of them.
Oh, the figures, the lit
Yeah,
figures,
there's like a
right.
snowman and a
Right.
Christmas tree and,
Right, they intend to also use those.
okay,
So this is Teresa and Vicky Schwaber working primarily on it, primarily Teresa. So they will get the information to the council if they decide to purchase those.
okay, and the council's pretty much said we'll dig up
Right.
$1,400
Right.
for it.
That's all.
Anything else?
I just had one quick thing. Jay and John are starting
Make a
up.
motion.
Sorry, we're starting back up on Minnow Creek. The crops are out, so that's kind of one of the things we've been waiting on. So we'll see more progress on that as the weeks go on. Thank you. I'm done.
I'm getting a lot, but finally get you to adjournment. All right, do I have a motion over here for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second here?
I'll second.
Got
Forcing you.
I was gonna say,
it.
we're,
Need no discussion.
Where
All
you
in
at?
favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Nice to
5-0.
see everybody.
8:57 PM.
Thanks for coming in. Drive carefully home, the roads are slick.